It's November 18th, 2018. And the subject of this video is Tony Bosley. Who is Tony Bosley? Well, this video presumes that the viewer knows something about Katelyn Nicole Davis and the tragic event that took her life in December of 2016. And also knows a little bit of what happened afterward and all the Facebook and YouTube video making and commenting around her that has happened for now almost the past 2 years. Tony Bosley is also one of the main participators in the Katelyn Nicole Davis case. But his role is, I would say, primarily the critic and attacker of anyone who would try to create a legacy for Caitlyn. Anyone who would try to make a tribute video of her or do any kind of project which would bring about a permanent online presence of this tragic yet rememberable girl. Now, why does Tony attack people who would try to remember Caitlyn? Well, there's many reasons. I know some of them, and I'll get into them later. But for now, let me tell you a bit about how I met Tony. It was on the Mr. Gunk channels. So this was back in May, June of 2017. At that time, there were primarily 2 video creators discussing Caitlyn. There was Celeste Who Knows, and she has proven to be a wonderful and enduring discusser of the Katelyn Nicole Davis case. And then there was Mr. Gunk. Now, Mr. Gunk has since proven to be himself no angel. And if you like, you can research that, but I want to stick to Tony. I met Tony on the Gunk channels, and what Tony was doing was he was continually attacking and harassing Mr. Gunk for making these videos that were bringing in hundreds of thousands of views. And I wondered, well, why was that happening? Because I was disapproving of that. I thought Caitlyn was somebody who needed to be brought out into the public view. So I engaged Tony in some of his comments, and I asked him why he was attacking Mr. Gunk. And I got back some pretty bizarre answers. At the time, Tony, he wasn't just using his name, he was also using a female name, Michelle Boyd. I'm not sure why he was doing that, but somehow he chose to do that. So I would talk to Michelle Boyd, and Tony realized later they were the same person. And well, Tony, he never really gave me a reason as to why he was attacking all the people who would try to discuss Caitlyn online. But the more I learned about Tony, the more I learned that there was much about him for which to be admired. He's a design engineer, all of it self-taught, metal fabricator and metal spinner. He made this crazy cannabis smoker contraption that looks like an accordion. And a lot of people make fun of that, but it actually takes quite a bit of skill to create something like that. And more interesting to me was Tony had this bizarre literary ability. He could create these long stream of consciousness sentences that would look to me more like poetry than prose. So that intrigued me. And on top of that, I thought that Tony had some kind of passion about the Katelyn Nicole Davis tragedy to be wanting to be involved in it so much and to have such longevity in it. Well, be it as it may, I never did quite figure out the source of that passion, because Tony's a complex man. And as time went by and Tony got worse and worse and worse with his comments, I realized that his inner complexity takes some unfortunate turns. So he said some pretty terrible and horrible things against people who would try to remember Caitlyn. He has talked about sending biker hitmen to beat people up. He wants to murder people. Whenever he finds a suicidal person on like a tribute site, he will try to make them even more suicidal just to knock them out of the picture. Yeah, that's Tony, always in attack mode. But when I look at all that, disapprove of it. And the reason I disapprove of Tony's actions is because I think Caitlyn is a person who should not be shut down, is a person who should be forever remembered. And the reason for that is she gave so many contributions now that the world needs. I could list a few. She, for example, showed us the roles that an abusive family can play in the death of a suicided child. Until her live streams, we never had a chance to see that in real time. And Caitlyn has showed us some of the failings some of our social agencies have done, such as CPS. Okay, they didn't intervene for Caitlyn in a proper way. Then there were the schools. All of her teachers and counselors, where were they? The hospitals. Well, there was one doctor prescribing her Prozac, which might have been a medication more appropriate for an adult than a 12-year-old child. Because now, in hindsight, we see what that did to her. But the main thing Caitlyn has contributed is she's given a very human face to one suicided child. So now we have one example of that kind of person, and we see that it's a wonderful and a good person. So we can never go back in time and just think of stereotypes about suicided children. We can never look at them as some kind of outcast pariahs, contagions, or whatever that should be thrown on some junk pile of worthless humanity, and that's the end of it. No, Caitlyn has changed all that. We can only go forward since her live streams. We can never go backward. But Tony would have none of that. He would like to destroy all of that. And that is why, to this day, we oppose all of Tony's actions to shut down internet activity on Katelyn Nicole Davis. What's the solution for Tony? I think he needs to reform himself. He needs to turn himself completely around, to look inward and to study that passion that brought him into the Katelyn Nicole Davis tragedy in the first place. And take that passion and redirect it into something positive, into creating a permanent legacy and remembrance for Caitlyn. So I think if he does that, he'll find some kind of relief from whatever pitchfork prodding demons I think seem to be tormenting the inner recesses of his inscrutable mind. Well, if anyone has any theories or thoughts about what drives and motivates Tony Bosley, welcome to comment below. And if Tony Bosley himself happens to watch this video, he too is welcome to comment and enlighten us as to why he acts the way he does.